Kodak Video Programs proudly announces a brand new video series of animal programs for children of all ages. Titled Animals in Action, this 12-volume video series combines fun and fact as you meet animals of all sizes and all shapes up close. See how animals live and adapt to their world. Laugh at rare moments of animals at play. Learn all about the differences of animals, how they move, talk, see at night, build their homes. With beautiful photography by award-winning Survival Anglia Limited, Animals in Action is a series you'll want to collect and enjoy over and over again.
The cruel, empty desert, mile after mile of blistering sand, hot and parched and seemingly lifeless. Yet even here in this brutal environment, animals have found a way to survive and flourish. In the next half hour, we'll find out how they do it. Hello, I'm Thane Maynard, and welcome to Animals in Action. Today we're going to be looking at how certain animals have adapted to some of the most extreme living conditions found anywhere on Earth. The hot, dry deserts. We'll be examining some pretty strange and far-out critters, but it looks like Keith Shackleton's already gotten started. Keith, what on earth is that thing?
This is the original far-out critter, Thane. I've been having a lot of fun making up an animal that doesn't exist. It's a humpless camel, that's what it is. And I think it would look something like a moose, a sad-looking moose, but a very shapeless animal. All this fat spread about all over it because there's no hump.
Well, but if it had fat spread throughout its body, it'd have a hard time to get overheated in the desert, wouldn't it?
Exactly. It would get very overheated, and that is, of course, the secret of why the camel has got this hump. Because all the fat is stored there, so it's nice and slim, and it can get on with the job of keeping cool.
A very special adaptation to a very special environment. Now let's take a look at the real thing. These are Bactrian camels from the Gobi Desert in Asia. They're grazing and building up fat supply for their humps. Humps that, by the way, actually weigh about 80 pounds each. Camels don't store water, but they can go for long periods without a drop to drink. On journeys, a camel may lose a third of its body weight without harm and then put it back on when food and water are plentiful. That's what these camels are doing here. But water conservation and humps aren't the only kinds of adaptation camels have made to desert life. A camel's eyes are protected by bushy eyebrows and double rows of eyelashes, and its ears are lined with extra hairs. These shield the camel from the fiercely blowing winds and sands. They really are busy, packing away all that juicy roughage, and it doesn't matter if they come across a thorn or two, because the animal's leathery mouth and tongue allow it to make a meal of thorny bushes and plants, as well as grass. The camel's coarse, mangy coat is a good insulator against both the heat of the day and the chill of the night, and its thickly padded feet prevent the animal from sinking into the sand. They only drink enough to replace the water used since their last drink. Sometimes this may be as much as 30 gallons. The camel may not be the most graceful animal in the world. In fact, years ago, someone described it as a horse designed by committee. But what it lacks in style, it makes up for in efficiency. It's built to survive one of the world's harshest environments. Another highly adapted desert dweller is the desert tortoise, found in our own western deserts. For tortoises, life isn't conducted at a high speed. It assumes a pace which is quite appropriate for this sort of climate. Like camels, most of the moisture they absorb comes from the plants they eat. They drink very little because there's very little to drink. Tortoises even have the ability to go for weeks on end, right through the dry season, without drinking anything at all. Another animal that can handle the hostile environment is the sidewinder, propelling its way across the Namib Desert in southwest Africa by looping its body sideways in S-shaped motions. It moves in the direction its head is pointing. The snake's body only touches the hot sand at 2 points, thus reducing contact with the blistering ground. There are no rocks or cacti here in the Namib to shield the sidewinder from the direct rays of the sun, so the snake escapes the heat by digging into the sand. This also minimizes the evaporation of moisture from its system. Here in America is another type of sidewinder. It's not related to the African one at all, but it has developed a similar type of movement. The American deserts are not only home to sidewinders, but also to their better-known relatives, western diamondback rattlesnakes. This one is checking out a pack rat nest for its next meal. The rattlesnake isn't the only poisonous reptile in the desert. There are poisonous lizards, too. This is a Gila monster, one of only 2 venomous lizards in the world. They're sluggish and slow-moving and don't attack anything as large as a human being. The majority of desert lizards are completely harmless, like that one over there on the dune. Lizards in general are more common than snakes in the desert because lizards withstand heat more effectively. They don't have to worry about losing body fluid through evaporation because their thick, scaly skin is relatively impervious. However, come high noon, it's getting more heat than it can handle, so it burrows down into the sand to cool off. Ground squirrels are very successful desert animals. They too dig burrows for comfort and protection. Mammals, of course, are naturally warm-blooded and don't need the sun to warm their systems. So you might assume that it's particularly difficult for these squirrels to withstand the unrelenting sun. But in fact, their coats insulate them against the heat of the day and the low temperatures of the evening. Just like the camel, these animals are well suited for this climate. Anyway, ground squirrels exist in thousands, so they must be doing something right. The coyote has to find shade during the day, and even there it's panting away. Just like a domestic dog, it's getting rid of excess body heat by panting. Nearby, a peccary digs down looking for roots and grubs. Its highly sensitive snout can actually detect a plant bulb through as much as 6 inches of ground. If you live in a desert, you really have to work for your dinner. Yet a peccary is truly at home in arid land. In fact, it would find life in a well-watered meadow nearly impossible because it's adapted to a desert's existence. Some desert adaptations are really extreme. This animal is a blind mole. It's swimming under the sand in search of insects to eat. It manages this without eyes or ears. An acute sense of smell is one of the mole's many tools for survival. Look at that huge eye. That's one sure way of spotting a night animal. It's a palmetto gecko. In fact, its eyes can't close. Instead, they're protected by a hard and transparent shield, a sort of a window, so that it can see under the sand. And these webbed feet are responsible for getting the animal down there. They are perfectly adapted for digging into loose sand, and it's there in the dark where the palmetto gecko likes to stay. My very favorite way of all to learn about an animal's adaptations is to take a look at it in person. And for desert animals, there's probably no better than this little leopard gecko. It comes from the very hot and dry deserts in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And it's called a leopard gecko, of course, because of its spots. That provides a little camouflage, but it doesn't need it too much, because like many desert dwellers, it's out at night. It's a nocturnal animal, hiding during the day. But some tricky things about it include its tail. Now, a camel stores its fat in its hump on its back. The gecko does the same trick, but in her tail. She stores her fat back here, and leopard geckos have been known to go for months without anything to eat or drink. And like a camel, they can lose a lot of weight without it hurting them. Another neat adaptation of theirs are their feet. Most geckos have hairs for climbing on their feet. These guys instead have claws, and their feet aren't webbed at all. Instead, they can run across the loose sand. Now, up on her head, you'll notice a neat thing. She has eyelids. Now, that might not seem special to us, but of the hundreds of species of geckos, only a couple that live in the desert have eyelids. They all have a special kind of a contact lens that keeps their eye moist, but that would get all scratched up and full of sand in the desert. So instead, she can actually blink, and that gives her a chance to keep the sand out of her eyes. Another neat thing is her ear, a very tiny slit on the back of her head. And you know what that does? It keeps the sand from getting in her ears, too. You know what's another special thing about her? She has 2 great big eggs, these pale spots on her belly, and she's going to lay those pretty soon, and I hope soon we'll have some baby geckos running around here. But now it's time for us to take another look at a desert digger. Here's a digger that burrows with a difference. It's a white lady spider excavating a chamber. Have you ever tried to make a hole in a bowl of sugar with a spoon and noticed how easily it caves in? The white lady spider can beat the system. Watch. Look at the way it pushes and shovels the sand out by using the base of its legs, like a bulldozer, then its feet to flick it away. But why isn't the hole falling in? It has spun a type of silk to cement the sand grains together all around the edge. The hole is now firm while the spider continues to dig deeper. But it hasn't finished yet. The spider has to make a lid because this is going to be a hunting trap as well as a home for the white lady spider. And the lid has to fit perfectly. Practically finished now. In a few seconds, you'd never know it was there. Here's another desert burrower. It's a shovel-headed beetle, and it doesn't have special silk, so it has to spend most of the night burrowing. The majority of smaller desert mammals are active only at night. This one's a kangaroo rat, a type of desert rodent from North America. Large eyes, typical of nocturnal animals. A long tail and huge hind legs give the kangaroo rat its name. Compare this with another rodent here shoveling out its burrow. This is a jerboa from Africa. Totally different species, but very similar to the kangaroo rat. Look at those huge ears. This group of nocturnal desert-living rodents includes a very familiar animal, the gerbil. Gerbils are dynamic movers. They almost look like wind-up toys that have been pushed into fast forward. But all this activity serves a purpose. The gerbil is a good example of an animal that's perfectly adapted to life in the desert. Keith, can you show us how they conserve water?
Yes, it's an interesting one, this thing. Here's a bank of sand, and our little gerbil has made a burrow in it, which is its home. Now remember, gerbils are nocturnal, so in they come to sleep for the day. Let's start with a little gerbil in the burrow there. There he's sitting. Now, when he came in the early morning, he brought with him lots of little seeds and husks and leaves, little bits of grass, and laid them all out on the floor of his lair. Now, he'll sleep then, but when he wakes up, before going out, he'll eat all that up because it's absorbed all the water. So he's going to take on board all that water, and away he goes. It's the most interesting example of water conservation.
And here's the real thing, just as Keith described it. The gerbil will eat this litter and reclaim almost all its precious moisture. As we've seen, in the desert, similar living conditions often result in similar adaptations of unrelated creatures. Kangaroo rats, jerboas, and gerbils not only look alike, but lead similar lives. Down below the surface of the desert, the little gerbil can curl up in relative comfort. But overhead, the cruel noonday sun bakes the dry and sterile earth. The restless wind molds the sand into wandering dunes. On occasion, the shifting sands reveal surprising glimpses of a very different world that existed here millions of years ago. These are fossilized sea urchins, small animals called sand dollars. Evidence that this desert was once the bed of an ocean, a totally different environment from what it is now. Although it's a cruel environment, deserts do grow plants. Of particular interest are our own southwestern saguaros. These cacti dominate the desert landscapes of Arizona, Texas, and Mexico. Because there are no trees in the desert, animals you'd normally associate with trees make their homes in these saguaros. There's a Gila woodpecker, a common desert bird. That's a thrasher enjoying a flower's nectar, and more importantly, the water that's gathering inside it. This is a young male hooded oriole. Cactus flowers act as a magnet, attracting a whole variety of desert birds like this perky little cactus wren. All desert animals have to be opportunists if they are to survive, but the birds are possibly the most opportunistic desert citizens of all. They must make a home as best they can in a place where good nesting sites are never easy to come by. Big or small, it takes ingenuity to survive. The cactus comes in all sizes, too. Some saguaros are enormous. They could be 50 feet high or taller. And I'm sure you've seen a cactus in a plant shop that's no more than an inch tall, including its little clay pot. A cactus is an easy plant to take care of because they don't have to be watered all the time. But it's precisely this unique way they have of holding on to their moisture that allows many desert animals to depend on a cactus for their survival.
Let's have a quick look at how some of these desert plants cope with this water absorption and passing it on to other desert animals. Here's a saguaro cactus, and we'll take a section through about there and have a look at the edge of the skin first. Well, here are the corrugations going round like that, like a cogwheel. And on each one, little tufts of spines which are shading the cactus and keeping it cool. Inside all this, it's soft and pithy, and that edge is waterproof to keep the moisture in. Now, I've drawn this in the dry season, and that's why these corrugations are so pronounced. The whole cactus is contracted. Now, if there were some rain, these would spread out much more, like that. And the spines would be much further apart, but all the water would be stored in there.
You know, this really is interesting. In this super close-up of these tiny tufts behind me, you can see that each one casts a shadow on the outer skin of the cactus and actually helps it keep cool and thereby protect it from drying up. Now we're going to see another unusual-looking desert plant, and one that certainly isn't about to win a beauty contest. This isn't a crashed airplane or a pile of old rags. It's a welwitschia, and it's unique to the Namib Desert. It's a very primitive plant, a relative of the pine tree. Individual plants can be up to 1,000 years old, and their roots sometimes reach down 80 feet into the sand in search of a little moisture. Their cones are being fertilized by little red bugs unique to this plant and this desert. It's incredible. If you were to travel all over the world, the only place you'd ever find this insect would be on this plant. And these strange plants litter the ground, eroded by wind and by drifting sand, looking very dead, but really very much alive. Just off the African coast blows a cold wind, bringing a heavy dew into the Namib. Plants and animals are quick to take advantage of this, some in a very curious way. This little darkling beetle adopts a strange posture when there's dew in the air. Moisture collects on its body, runs down the grooves along its back to the head where it's swallowed. A remarkable little creature. But the darkling beetle's not the only insect to take advantage of the moist air. Ants, too, take the water when it's available. It won't be long, however, before this early morning mist clears, leaving the desert hot and parched once more. But this coastal strip of the Namib, with its very, very heavy mist, must make it unique among deserts all over the world. And unique deserts lead to unique plants, like desert melons. These plants, along with cactuses and welwitschia, provide refreshment for many animals, including one of the Namib's many species of beetle. This is an African meerkat. Right now it's enjoying a siesta, but hunger will soon interfere with the midday break. In the case of the meerkat, the menu for today will probably include a juicy scorpion or two. Eventually, a large scorpion in the shade of a rock catches the meerkat's eye. Even though the scorpion has a potent sting at the end of its tail, the meerkat isn't intimidated, and it pounces on its prey, securing for itself both food and moisture all in one, or 2 or 3 gulps. Food is always a priority in the desert, and the species that eats the widest variety of foods is the most likely to succeed. The desert and its citizens, the blind mole swimming through the sand to find the insects that it eats. The sinister little sidewinder, looping its way across the sand, leaving that extraordinary track behind. The white lady spider, making a trap door to help it hunt down a meal. On the one hand, the tortoise, taking life in its stride and living such a long time. And on the other, the little gerbil, so intensely active, as if it had to get everything done before sunrise, which is more or less true. Digging away, shredding up its bedding in order to recycle every little bit of moisture. Each animal finding its own way to deal with the desert. The word desert comes from a Latin word meaning abandoned and empty. But we know that deserts are full of life, with animals that are highly specialized to track down the tiny traces of water that exist, and equally important, to hold on to it once they've found it. Join us again next time for another look at animals in action. Greatly speeded up, a spider spins its web. And a well-camouflaged spider is about to attack this bee. One of the scariest spiders of all, a tarantula in its dangerous search for a mate. Spiders of all kinds, and all saying in their own way, "Little Miss Muffet, here I come." Hi, I'm Thane Maynard, and welcome to Animals in Action. And just what do you think about spiders? Do you hate them? Do they make you shudder? A lot of people are scared of them, but not Keith Shackleton, right?
No way, Thane. Spiders fascinate me.
Me too. And that's why we're going to show you why spiders might just be the most surprising and delightful little animals there are. Give or take a few, there are 30,000 species of spiders on Earth, ranging from the size of a pinhead to bigger than your hand. They have found ways to live just about everywhere apart from the polar regions. All spiders spin silk, so their homes are made of silk. They also use silk for wrapping up their prey. It's spun from the spinnerets, and the silk is drawn out by the hind legs. There are 6 silk-producing glands, and each produces a different type of silk. It's liquid at first, but solidifies immediately upon contact with air. Spiders are predators. They all have fangs. These are tarantula fangs. Spiders have good eyesight, too. 6 or 8 eyes mounted on turrets, often of different sizes, and looking in different directions. This one's a wolf spider, signaling to his lady. Those little wolf spiders are really quite small. But what about the biggest of them all? It's a tarantula, and Keith's got one right here on his drawing board. And though it's the biggest spider you'll ever see, it's not really poisonous to humans, but it is capable of giving a very nasty bite. You know, Keith, a lot of people think that spiders are insects, but in fact they're in a special group called arachnids.
That's right.
Can we call upon your formidable talents to show us the difference between spiders and insects?
Yeah, it's a good, simple one, this, really. So I'm going to draw good, simple shapes. A spider has got 2 body forms. An insect has got 3. Now, a spider has got, all on the front body form, 8 legs. I'll just draw one side because it'll complicate things, so I'm drawing 4 legs. An insect has got 6 legs, so I'm drawing 3. Always on that segment. Now, most insects have got wings, generally 2 pairs of wings. Spiders have no wings at all. Most insects have got antennae. Spiders don't have antennae, but they have a pair of pedipalps that look like another pair of legs sticking forward. Spiders have got jaws and fangs. Not all insects have. There are only a few differences there, but enough for starters, then.
Right. Many spiders are web spinners, but not all. The next spider we're going to look at catches its prey in a completely different way. Beautiful wild heather. If you look closely, you can see a fly sitting on a flower, and close behind it a tiny spider, one of the crab spiders. This species is called Thomisus. Thomisus is a master of camouflage. In shape, color, and texture, it is a perfect match for the heather flowers. You scarcely notice it until it moves. The fly certainly didn't notice it. It walked right up on top of Thomisus, thinking the spider was just another heather flower. By rights, it should have been the end for the fly, but it was lucky this time. You can see why it's called a crab spider. It sits with its 2 long front legs sticking out, ready to seize its victims. Thomisus continues its imitation of a heather bloom and waits. Enter a bee. There's no web to catch the prey in, just a skillful pounce. In go the fangs, and the bee is stunned. Thomisus has captured his victim. Now Thomisus will wrap the bee up in silk. Here's Adipus and the purse web it has built for itself. These purse webs are shapeless-looking things, a bit like a silken tunnel. It's a sort of sleeve half buried under the roots that leads down into the earth. Adipus is down there at the bottom, waiting. That fly just thinks the web is an old route and begins to walk along it. This sends vibrations along the tube to Adipus. Now the spider moves quietly inside the tube until it's directly below the fly. You know, this is really remarkable photography. And once he's there, he'll wait for his opportunity to pounce. There! Oh, missed it! The fangs pierce the web but miss the fly. The fly approaches again and lands on the tube. This time, the spider's fangs catch the fly. The spider is pulling the fly through from the inside. It cuts a slit in its own painstakingly made tube to pull the fly through the skin of the web. The fly is stunned and hardly struggles as it is pulled to its doom. Then Adipus repairs the slit in her web and will proceed to eat her catch inside. Now these Stegodiphes are a very unusual species of spider. They live in colonies in Africa, enmeshed within woolly, untidy masses about 3 feet across. It's too big a web for one spider to have made on its own. This web was built by a community of about 50 spiders. Now they're going to share the locust they've caught. From a colony of spiders to a loner that could very well be in your living room. It's the homely old house spider, living mostly alone, but sometimes with a mate, in one of the most untidy webs of all. Here she's defending her territory, fighting off an intruder. A house spider's the one you're always finding in the bathtub. You think you've washed it down the drain, but it seems that spiders know much more about plumbing than you might guess. They can always find a way back again. This is hard work for a spider. They are inefficient breathers and quickly run out of breath. But there it is, all set to torment you again in the morning. Keith's going to show us how a spider sets about building a typical orb web. Keith?
Well, let's have a look. Say that's the bottom of a twig going across there. Now, the spider will begin by, from this point, spinning a dry silk web across to about there. And then it'll scuttle back down the web and drop away down, and that'll pull that into a Y. That's the classic way of starting it. He'll keep on doing that and dropping verticals until he's built up a framework like this one. Spokes, radials like that. Then he'll go to the middle and start the finishing touches, which will be round and round and round and round with sticky silk, bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, until he's more or less filled in the framework. Then, in he goes to the middle and ties a little thread from there, and this is the vital part of the whole thing, because he scuttles back again to his lair. Little twig up here, and here we've got our spider sitting up there, and he's got one hand on the signal line, just as we would hold a fishing line, and waiting. As soon as that net shakes and there's an insect in it, he'll scuttle down there, grab the insect, back up to his lair, and cocoon it up.
You know, Keith, it's amazing to me that in a single spider web, there's over 20 yards of silk, thousands of little junctions, and yet they weigh less than a grain of sand.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Now let's go look at the professionals at work. A spider will take an hour or more to make an orb web, and we've just watched it in seconds. This is a garden spider's web. It's triangular rather than round. It's supported at 3 points. If you look closely, you'll see that it's the spider's body itself which makes up one of the strands, where it's joined to the twig. The spider's sitting up there with its finger on the signal line, waiting for a bite. The web is vibrating like mad. There's definitely something there, and in this case, it's probably much more than he bargained for, a tortoiseshell butterfly. Even though that enormous butterfly is struggling for all it's worth, the silk won't break. For its size, a spider's silken thread is about as strong as a steel cable. Finally, the victim's wrapped up in a cocoon of silk to be eaten later. The spider's body still forms a link of the web, even while it's doing this. Here's a nephila. She's just caught a wasp. This is a different sort of orb web, but it still follows the same basic pattern. Now she's wrapping up her prey into a nice, tidy package. The nephila is weaving a multitude of fine threads to wrap up the prey. Her legs end in a special arrangement of claws and bristles, which enable her to grip the threads. There's another reason why she's so good at moving about the web. The web itself is never vertical. It's always slightly inclined. This means that she can move about on the underside and keep her abdomen away from the sticky threads. Now she hauls up her catch. Look at this. There's another spider up there, a really tiny one. And do you know that wasn't a different species? That's actually her mate. That little diminutive thing is the male nephila. This is really common among spiders. The male is nearly always smaller than the female. This little spider is trying to get a bit of that meal from the female, but he's got to watch his step. Many female spiders simply gobble up their mates. The reason for this remarkable behavior can be explained by the fact that spiders are not social animals. They don't have a built-in system to ensure that only the strongest and healthiest males will father the next generation. Therefore, it's up to the female herself to make the selection. If the male is too slow or weak, it will die before it has a chance to mate with the female. If it is quick and strong enough, it will successfully mate and therefore pass its characteristics on to the next generation. But this spider's not interested in mating at the moment. He's just hungry. Tentatively, he makes his approach, but he's immediately rejected. But being patient and also very hungry, he'll try again. Finally, it looks as if the little fellow's made it, and he's going to get his meal. If they mate, she'll lay eggs, and those eggs will hatch into hundreds of perfect little spiders. Spiders don't go through a larval stage at all like insects do. This species is called Pysora. When she's ready to lay eggs, she weaves a special tray of silk. Now she extrudes her eggs, and they congeal on the silken tray. Finally, Pysora covers her eggs with silk until they're tightly wrapped in a cocoon. It's believed that originally spiders only used silk to protect their eggs. The use of silk to catch prey is thought to be a later adaptation, given the fact that not all spiders use silk this way. When it's complete, Pysora carries the cocoon around with her, hanging beneath her body. Motherhood is never an easy job.
Now here's the tarantula we saw earlier on in the show. This one's a Costa Rican tarantula from the forests in Central America. Believe it or not, it's a small tarantula. Some of the big ones are as big around as a frisbee. But first, a warning. If you see a spider, big or small, you shouldn't handle it like this. I'm a trained naturalist and used to working with wild animals, but spiders are venomous and they can pack a powerful bite. Let me show you the business end of a tarantula. You can see here its fangs. They're long and black, and you can bet they would be painful. But they also have a neat defense mechanism. Some people say that tarantulas invented itching powder. See this bald spot on his abdomen? They'll rub their hind legs on there and knock off the little hairs, and that'll be an irritant to a predator like a skunk or a fox or something that wants to try to eat it. And then the spider makes his getaway. These little things are the tarantula spinnerets, and though they don't weave a web because they're too big, they spin silk to wrap up their food and save it for later. Now we're going to the Arizona desert where these big saguaro cacti grow to find a tarantula on his home turf.
This male tarantula is out to find a female. Male hunting spiders, like tarantulas, have a special problem when it comes to courting. To begin with, the females are much bigger. Secondly, he has to switch her from a prey-catching mood to a mating mood. She's in that hole. He's approaching extremely cautiously. He taps very gently to see if she's at home. He wants to entice her out into the open for courtship. So far, so good. He taps out a special rhythm on the side of the burrow, and it looks like he's in for success. Tarantula courtship's a fearsome-looking affair. It's a sort of ritual trial of strength. The male is trying to force the female over onto her back, and all the time her fangs are ready to strike. If he survives this and manages to mate with her, he'll only last another 3 months. The days of a male tarantula are always numbered. The male has spurs on his front legs with which to hold the female's fangs open and out of harm's way. All the time he keeps up a special tapping with his legs, which he hopes will calm the female down. Eventually, the male makes good his escape, which is lucky for him because given her druthers, he'd be a goner by now. Now here's a hunter that specifically stalks tarantulas. It's a Pepsis wasp. This little insect doesn't allow female tarantulas to have it all their own way. It's not called a tarantula hawk for nothing. It's a sly and cunning insect. It's at the tarantula's burrow making the same tapping that we saw the male make to attract the female. But this time it's for a completely different reason. Out comes the female. She thinks she's about to meet her mate, but an even more sinister kind of battle is beginning. The wasp has a fearsome sting in its abdomen, and the tarantula has powerful fangs in its head, so it's a standoff. The wasp keeps on trying to bring its stinger forward. The object is not to kill the spider outright, but just to paralyze it, and the wasp is successful. Well, it's been a long and exhausting battle. A brief rest for the wasp after all that exertion. Now, the purpose of all this is that the wasp needs the unconscious tarantula to lay her egg on. When the egg hatches into a grub, the unconscious tarantula will be a living larder for the wasp grub to feed on. Now, all the wasp has to do is dump the spider into the wasp's lair and lay its egg on top of the comatose tarantula. A theridian's web looks just like a messy tangle of threads. In fact, it's an extremely clever piece of engineering. The tangle of threads are thickened into a sheet in the middle. It has long lines which reach to the ground. These threads are under tension and coated with globules of sticky stuff. When ants get caught in the threads, the taut threads sever, jerking the ant off the ground. It's an ingenious way of catching ants, a meal which few other spiders will eat. Once the ant is caught, Theridian throws viscous silk all over it before biting it to death. But now for the tender side of Theridian. She has a nursery full of young spiders, and she shares her meals with them. When she hauls an ant up, she invites the spiderlings to come and feed too. We'll end now with Deinopsis, an elegant and resourceful spider from Trinidad, probably the most ingenious of them all. Well, Deinopsis is busy spinning, but spinning what? It looks rather like a cat's cradle. She keeps on brushing the silk with special bristles on her legs. This makes the silk extremely woolly. In fact, she's spinning a handheld net of elastic silk. She cuts it loose from the original framework and stretches the net to test it. When she's completed it, she'll lower herself close to the ground. There she'll hang upside down, waiting for something to pass by. Here comes a beetle. And she's got it. She uses a new net for each catch. Here comes another insect, and she's got it again. And there's your insect, beautifully gift-wrapped in the finest quality silk. Ingenious, inventive, and always surprising, spiders have carved a unique niche in the animal world. There's certainly a lot of drama in the lives of spiders, but I hope you're not shuddering anymore when you see them. There's little need to. It's true that many can be dangerous, but most of them are delightfully easy to live with. Join us again next time for another look at Animals in Action. Hello, I'm Thane Maynard, and welcome to Animals in Action. Today, Keith Shackleton and I will be looking at some very specialized animals. Animals that are awake when we're asleep. Nocturnal animals that hunt and eat and build their nests at night. These animals go to sleep when we wake up. Keith, maybe one of your drawings could set the scene for our look at these nighttime creatures.
Well, let's try. Look at it this way to begin with. Every 24 hours, there's daylight, isn't there? And there's darkness. And between the two, there is dawn and there's dusk. Twilight periods. Now, each of these periods bring out their own particular animals. Here are typical daytime animals. There are a host of them, but I've drawn a little Thompson's gazelle and a kangaroo. Those are diurnal animals, and those are the ones that one hopes will have the sun shining on them all day long. Now, the nocturnal ones, the owls, the bats, skunks, again a host of other ones. These are the nocturnal boys, and they're living under the moon. Now we've got the halfway house. The ones that come out at dusk and are out at dawn, lions, the bears, there are a host of them again, even a little humble rabbit. These we call crepuscular animals. And that little rabbit there is having quite a good view of the sunrise.
Each has its special reasons for being active at a particular time and its own special adaptations to help make the most of it. But now it's time for us diurnal animals to take a look at some of our nocturnal neighbors. At twilight, the nightlife begins to make an appearance. Rabbits spend half their lives below ground in a maze of underground tunnels where they remain hidden from predators. At dusk, they venture cautiously above ground, alert and attentive at all times. Elsewhere in the hills, the last rays of sunlight filter through the forest. This is the time of day when some of the most secretive animals come out. The diurnal hunters have retired to sleep, and the night shift are not yet active. A shy roe buck cautiously moves out into the open for a quiet feed. Man has hunted these small deer from prehistoric times for sport and food, and also because they cause considerable damage to young trees. Human interference has had a great influence on their lives. As a result, they are crepuscular in habit. active for 3 hours after first light and 2 hours before dark. Under conditions where they are totally undisturbed, they turn to feeding by daylight. They anoint vegetation with scent to mark out their territories. Predominantly browsing animals, they're to be found in both coniferous and deciduous woods, providing there's plenty of cover. They have an acute sense of smell, sight, and hearing. Forever alert and on the lookout for signs of danger, they are restless by nature, but will freeze as soon as they sense danger. Roe deer are rarely caught out in the open. They have an almost uncanny ability to slip away silently and unseen when disturbed. But as night steals on, it is time for the nocturnal animals to make their appearance.
Here's a nocturnal animal that I bet you haven't seen before. It's an olingo. His name is Lingo, and he's very rare. He comes from the tropical forests in South America, and he lives up in trees. And he's active, of course, at nighttime. And a close look at his face can tell you why. He's got those large eyes. It's so bright in here, the pupils are very, very small, so they don't let in too much light. But when it's darker, they open a lot more. He also has a protruding nose that's very sensitive, a much better sense of smell than people have. He also has those whiskers for feeling. He also has big ears. Can you see him moving a little bit? They're very sensitive. So he's able to find his food, sniff it out, and sometimes even catch it. He mostly eats fruits, but he'll also eat small insects and things he comes upon. His closest cousin is a kinkajou that you might be more familiar with, but a distant cousin is the raccoon. He's in the same family as the raccoon. You can tell that when you look at his long tail. It still has little bits of stripes on it. When he's very young, their stripes are more dominant. But that tail is actually longer than his whole body, and that helps him at nighttime too. He uses it as a balance beam when he's leaping through the trees. I'm holding on to him fairly tightly because he's good at leaping and getting loose. Also, for living in the trees at night, he has long claws for hanging on and grabbing fruits and things. So you can say when you see an olingo, you've seen an animal that is built for a life in the darkness.
Most moths lie hidden, still, silent, and camouflaged during the daylight hours, hoping to deceive hungry birds. Protected by darkness, the elephant hawk moth flies by night. The large eyes are specially adapted for night vision, and the moth can distinguish a plant in bloom from quite a distance. Night-opening flowers are usually strong-scented as well, with the specific purpose of attracting moths which help pollinate them. Hawk moths are strong flyers. Whirring their wings, they can sip nectar from blooms by hovering in front of them, rather like a hummingbird. Their long, elegant tongue, or proboscis, is really a long sucking tube like a straw. As soon as it is full of nectar, it is curled up and the sweet, sugary solution is drained into the mouth. Under cover of darkness, the snails emerge from the safety of their shells. As evening falls, so does the light and the temperature of both air and soil. But the moisture level of the air rises at the same time. These changes act as an awakening alarm for the snail. During the day, snails retire into their shells, sealing themselves in to escape the drying out effects of the sun. Snails produce a trail of slime, over which they glide to move from one place to another. In a hot, dry place, the slime would dry up and the snail would be immobilized. Slugs, like snails, only come out when the atmosphere is damp, and that usually means at night. Slugs have no spiral shell to prevent their bodies from drying out or shriveling up in the sun. So they retreat under stones, rotting wood, or deep beneath the roots of plants by day. The horns at the top of the head are in reality retractable tentacles. The black spots at the tip of the larger upper pair are eyes. The second smaller pair are sensitive to touch, and slugs use them to feel their way around. Warty and wrinkled, the common toad is a wonderful hunter. They are particularly partial to slugs and snails, so gardeners like them. The slug beats a slimy, if rather slow, retreat, but then the toad isn't exactly quick off the mark either. The large, coppery golden eyes are adapted for night vision and specifically to detect moving objects. They spend the night hunting down beetles, woodlice, millipedes, and worms. Toads have no teeth, but the sticky tongue strikes like lightning. Here, the film has been slowed down to reveal some of the action. At daybreak, the toad will crawl deep into a hole and retire for the day. The larvae of this insect prowls the night for slugs and snails, but the adults specialize in lighting up the night sky. These are glowworms. They're actually beetles, but the female never develops wings, and it's her general grub-like appearance which is responsible for their name. After nightfall, the female climbs up tall grass strands and prominently displays her luminous end. The lure of the light attracts the winged male, which will home in on his glowing mate. Hidden in the brambles, bank voles come out to play shortly after sunset. They are active for short spells throughout the day because they need a small but regular intake of food. During the daylight, they move within their home ranges, along subterranean tunnels, keeping well out of sight. Only under the cloak of darkness do they venture out into the open. They rummage around in the leaf litter, feeding on roots, bulbs, fruit, and the odd insect. Bank voles have to be exceptionally shy and secretive because they're the prey of a wide variety of predators. The sleek stoat is one of their greatest enemies. Hunting at all hours with a keen sense of smell, sight, and hearing, the stoat snakes around in the grass with alarming agility. Attacking like lightning, their unsuspecting prey hardly ever know what hit them.
You know, Keith, we humans are so dependent on our eyesight, we sometimes have a hard time understanding how nocturnal animals get around in the dark.
Well, they've got their own methods, haven't they? I mean, look at my old cat here. And you think of the value of whiskers like that. Stiff, sensitive whiskers, and even one or two up here. You know, it's exactly like if we are stuck in a power cut, the electricity goes out. And what do? We start groping around the room, looking for furniture or the door handle or a box of matches to light a candle. Well, the whiskers on the cat are what hands are to us.
You know, and speaking of hands, most nocturnal animals have very sensitive paws that can provide a lot of information to them, even in the dark. Here's a little experiment to show you how it works. You may say, how do they get so much information just using their hands or their paws? Well, put an orange or a tennis ball in your hands, close your eyes, and you can easily tell which one is the good one to eat, just with the information from your hands. But of course, nocturnal animals also really do use their eyes. Keith, maybe one of your drawings that show how those rods work.
Oh, well, this is the old human eye sketch. It's a very rough sketch, but we all know how a human eye works. The light comes in through the lens and is projected onto the retina at the back here. Now, the retina has behind it a lot of rods. And their job is to transmit the image through the optic nerve to the brain. Now, if that's an owl's eye, it looks exactly the same, hardly any difference at all, except that it's got a great many more of these rods, all the way around. There we are. That's now the eye of an owl. Well, we've got pretty effective eyes, but an owl in the dark is even better than ours.
But there's one more thing about the eyes of nocturnal animals that help them see in the dark. Have you ever noticed if a flashlight or the lights from your car shine in the eyes of a cat or a raccoon, their eyes actually glow in the dark? That's because the light that comes from the flashlight or the car is bouncing off a kind of a mirror in their eye called the tapetum. It's in the back of their eye, behind the rods. On Keith's drawing, the tapetum would be right back here. And the way it works is that first the light comes into the eye and crosses the rods, but then reflects off and hits the rods again. So it's like seeing twice as much light. I'll show you an experiment and show you how it works. Keith's got a flashlight, and if I hold up my hand, you can see, pretend my fingers are rods. They get the light from the flashlight. But when I hold up a mirror, the back of my hand also gets the light. If my fingers were the rods, they'd be receiving twice as much light. So in short, what we're saying is that nocturnal animals don't need more light than they already get because they've many different adaptations to make it possible for them to get around in the dark. But now, let's look at one of the superstars of the nocturnal and crepuscular world, the owl. As the light fades, it becomes increasingly difficult for us diurnal animals to see. The creatures of the night depend on other sources of light than the sun. The moon and the stars light the night sky with a silvery glow. In order to take advantage of all the prey animals around at night, owls have eyes as highly specialized as bats have ears. The eyes are so large that there's no space left inside the skull to allow for eye muscles. So to compensate for the loss of eye movement and all-around vision, the owl can rotate its head in almost a full circle. Because of deep, soft feathers, owls like this tawny owl generally appear to have little or no neck, but this is an illusion. Underneath the feathers, the neck is long and very mobile. This enables the birds to look directly behind them with ease. Owls are not silent. Before they start to hunt, they fill the air with their eerie calls. These are some of the creatures the owl will keep a sharp lookout for. Long-tailed field mice, otherwise known as wood mice. They scurry around the forest floor and the leaf litter searching for food. It's imperative that these mice be alert, attentive, and on the lookout for danger at all times. Field mice are included in the diet of weasels, stoats, foxes, badgers, and cats, as well as owls. But since it is a very prolific animal, capable of breeding at 2 months old, if it were not for the work of the predators, these mice would overrun the countryside. These ones don't know it, but they're being watched from above. They are curious, inquisitive explorers, sometimes throwing caution to the wind. But this is not a safe place to tarry.
Owls are certainly the best-known nocturnal flyers, but they aren't the only ones, are they, Keith?
By no means. I mean, look at this whole night full of wings I've gathered together here. There's all this family of nightjars, the nighthawks and whippoorwills and oilbirds and all of those. They're abroad in the night. And the big hawk moths, chasing around in a summer's night looking for the nectar in flowers. And big, dozy beetles droning about in the dark. And the master of it all, the bat, with that wonderful echolocation system, that sonar that'll pick up tiny insects and snatch them out of the sky. And woodcock, coming and going in a strange, mysterious way, coming in the dark, lying up in deep cover through the next day, and then pushing off in the next dark night. And, of course, the hawking owls. What night would be worth a hoot without an owl?
And don't forget the fact that songbirds generally migrate at night, and many ducks and geese continue their foraging in the dark. So although most birds are diurnal, it's well to remember that the night sky can be a pretty busy place too. The head of the shrew appears to be all nose, suggesting the emphasis here is on the sense of smell. Keeping out of sight in runways and tunnels just below the surface, their nose guides them through the night.
Their movements are swift and bustling. Exploring busily, they stop frequently to sniff the air. They are active day and night because they would starve after only a couple of hours without food. The elongated snout, bristling with tactile whiskers, is strong enough to probe for invertebrates and roots among the leaf litter. It's an effective shovel, yet it also retains a delicate sense of touch. This masked bandit, the raccoon, roams over most of North America. Being principally nocturnal animals, raccoons hunt by touch, feeling for their prey with their sensitive front paws. When they hunt in shallow water, it looks very much as if they're washing. Down in the mangrove swamps, raccoons dabble for their favorite food, crabs. Wherever they live, they explore all the boundaries of their environment. Inquisitive, agile, and highly adaptive, they poke their noses, often literally, into everything. A wire fence designed to keep out intruders is no barrier against a raccoon. They have no fear of the haunts of man, and they're always seeking out new sources of food, so the two often come in contact. A picnic area may yield a few scraps for this adventurous bunch. The raccoon's diet is so wide-ranging, it can flourish on almost anything, including what we throw out. Some people think of raccoons as sweet and charming, but to the farmers, they are a pest. There are still large populations of raccoons living in the wild, but more and more are moving into the outskirts of our towns. The bright life is a relatively easy one. There are garbage cans to raid, scraps to pick up, and leftovers to steal.
I'm going to draw you a very special snake now that takes its prey in the dark without using sight or touch or smell. And snakes don't have ears anyway. And I'll show you how it does it. Here's the snake. It's called a pit viper. It's rather an evil-looking snake, but then most vipers are. They have that rather spade-shaped head. There's the eye. Little nostrils on the tip of the nose here. And behind the nostril, just in there, is the pit that gives it its name. Now, it really is a pit. It's a deep hole, just like an enlarged nostril, and another one on the other side. And in the bottom of that pit is a membrane that's sensitive not to light like the retina of the eye, but to heat. It passes a heat picture back to the brain so that it can tell anything that's slightly warm in front of it exactly where it is. And not surprisingly, the pit viper feeds on little birds if it can get it, little rodents and mice, because they are warmer than everything around them. It gets this heat picture, and it's so sensitive that a fraction of a degree will tell it exactly where the prey is in the darkness so that it can slide forward and take it.
Snails, slugs, beetles, and their kin are active at night because they prefer the coolness and the dew. Hedgehogs come out at night because those are the animals they feed on. Hedgehogs are almost entirely nocturnal, so to film the elusive little animals going about their business at night, special filming techniques and equipment have been developed. Here, while there's still sufficient light, this camera team set up and attached an image intensifier to their camera. Then they have to wait for darkness to fall and snufflings and grunts that'll announce the arrival of a hedgehog. The special cathode ray tube in the image intensifier produces a green light. Images which can't be seen by the naked eye can now be filmed. Although the picture isn't perfect, nocturnal activities can be captured on film without disturbing the animals. Somewhere out there in the long grass are some hedgehogs. Using this special camera, the team was able to film the courtship of a pair of wild hedgehogs. This rather prickly affair had rarely been seen before, let alone ever filmed. The male cautiously approaches the female. He adopts a curiously jerky movement during his advance. For the moment, the female plays hard to get, and turning her head to one side gives her ardent suitor the cold shoulder. The final ritual consists of the male walking round and round the female, accompanied by much snorting and grunting. To encourage her, he gives her an occasional shove. The setting sun over the mountains of Nepal heralds the emergence of the local nocturnal animals. A rare one-horned or Indian rhinoceros forges the river to feed on reed beds beyond. The image intensifier is especially useful for filming rare, shy, and secretive animals like this rhino. Indian rhinos once ranged right across the Indian subcontinent. Today, hunting pressures and habitat destruction have reduced their numbers to less than 1,000 individuals. Indian tigers, too, venture out at night. They, too, have suffered terribly at the hands of man, and in an effort to avoid all contact, they've turned nocturnal. Shy and elusive, they're difficult to film under the best conditions. But to capture them courting or making a kill in total darkness is only possible using an image intensifier. The tiger crouches, lying in wait to ambush an unsuspecting victim. The kill is swift, the outcome foregone. The tiger, always alert and aware of the threat of hunters, attempts to drag the heavy carcass from out of the open and into the privacy of the overgrown forest. The dark, secretive world of the nocturnal animals is neither as safe or as quiet as we might suppose. As the sun rises, a new day dawns. The animals of the night shift conceal themselves. Nocturnal hunters like this stoat curl up and prepare to snooze away the day. Above the sleepy stoat, the air is filled with birdsong. The dawn chorus symbolizes the start of another day. It is now the turn of the diurnal animals to wake and venture forth. Each time of day offers special advantages and dangers for every animal. Today we've been looking at those animals that would not survive very long in the bright light of day. They might be more easily caught by predators, for instance, or their bodies might get too hot and dry up, or they might find it difficult to compete with other animals for their food. For these and other reasons, they've adapted to a life in the dark, a life that's every bit as normal for them as a life in the daylight is for us. In a very special sense, these animals share the world with us, even though we rarely, if ever, see them. Thanks for being with us. I hope you'll join us again soon for another look at Animals in Action.